Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your service. We'll try to get through a lot of ground here. The 65 detainees that were released from Par-1 prison by the Karzai government, I want to thank General Dempsey and Secretary Hagel for speaking out strongly and supporting General Dunford. I know, Secretary Hagel, you've been intimately involved in this issue. Do both of you believe it would help if the Congress spoke on this issue about the consequences to our force and to the Afghan people of continued release of detainees of this nature?
Senator, I do think it'd be very helpful. You probably understand it as well as anybody in this body for the reasons we know. And I appreciate your leadership, as I have told you and as I've said publicly. But the Congress's voice in this would be very important because this is a huge threat to our people.
And I worry about more to come in the last hours of the Karzai administration. So Senator Levin and myself have a bipartisan resolution condemning these actions and threatening to cut off economic assistance if they continue. So I would like to urge my colleagues to find a way to get that passed as soon as possible. So I do want to thank you both there. Sequestration was not your idea, was it, Secretary Hagel?
No, let the record show.
Nor was it yours, General Dempsey.
No, Senator, it was not.
Whatever differences we may have, the problem that we're discussing was created by the Congress and the White House. And please don't misunderstand what's going on here. The military has never suggested this roadmap we have set out for them. It was part of a super committee punishment clause, and here we are. So I just want to let everybody know that you didn't create this problem. You're going to have to help us solve it and live with it. But having said that, we'll talk about some things about the budget. When it comes to reforming personnel cost, dealing with personnel cost, that's a must no matter how much money you have in the budget. Do you agree with me, General Dempsey?
I do, Senator. There are some things we should do, sequestration aside, and that's one of them.
And I agree. I mean, I want to be generous to our military men and women. I want TRICARE to be a great deal, but a sustainable deal. It's on the path, Mr. Hill, of being unsustainable, isn't it? TRICARE growth?
I'd rather put it that if we can slow the growth there, we can spend the money where we need it more.
Well, the problem is that as it grows, it crowds out the rest of the budget. And we haven't had a premium increase since 1995. Is that correct?
Well, actually, a couple of years ago, you did allow some modest fee increases in TRICARE Prime.
Structurally, it hasn't changed much.
That's correct.
So I want to compliment you for putting all these tough issues on the table. Whether or not I agree with each proposal, I hope the Congress will back you up as to how we sit down and look at future retirement benefits, grandfather everybody, but whether or not you should be able to retire at half pay for the rest of your life when you're 42 needs to be put on the table. That's why I'm waiting on the Commission. When it comes to TRICARE reforms, when it comes to looking at everything, including commissaries, count me in reforming the military, count me out when it comes to gutting the military. So within that understanding, I'd like to talk a little bit about our budget here. Mr. Hill, what percentage of GDP are we spending on our national defense in this budget?
In 15, it'll be about 3.2% for DOD.
Okay, historically, in times of peace, is that low or high?
Well, it depends what history you're looking at, but I know where you're going. But if you go back 10, 20 years, it was a lot higher.
I only got 3.5 minutes.
It was higher in the past. I'd argue it's not a very good measure to determine the size of the budget, but it was definitely higher in the past.
Well, apples to apples, it's been well over 5 in times of peace. Do you consider this, General Dempsey, a time of peace?
No, Senator. It would be hard to describe it that way.
Okay. It would be hard to describe this as a time of peace. The budget, 3.2%, is below, dramatically below what we would spend on military in time of peace. We'll see if we can reconcile that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the ongoing conflict. Have you talked with anyone in the Ukraine on the military side, Secretary Hagel, that would indicate that if Russia continues to advance and there is a military conflict, if they move eastward toward Kiev, that they would request armaments from NATO?
I have not spoken with anyone who has suggested that or
Let's
asked that.
say, and we hope it doesn't happen, let's say that Putin for some reason moves forward and moves forward toward Kiev, beyond the Crimea. Would you support providing arms to the Ukraine if they asked NATO?
Well, if it's a NATO decision, as you know, that would take all 28 members of NATO.
What would our vote be?
I don't know. It depends on the circumstances. You know the NATO relationship with Ukraine. We support,
What if
as
they
the
asked
President
us
has said,
unilaterally?
to provide them armaments and,
Yes.
and equipment? I know that
As Russia marches toward Kiev under that scenario.
that would be a presidential decision, and he would make that decision, and we'd
I hope
give him
it
the
doesn't
recommendations.
happen, but I just
I do
want
too.
Russia to know that we're not going to sit on the sidelines forever here. If they have an escalation plan in their thinking, I would like them to know what comes their way. If the Ukrainian people are willing to fight and die for their freedom, I don't want any American boots on the ground, but that's something we need to think about as a nation. When it comes to 420 or 440,000 people in the Army, what percentage of that 440,000 would actually be trigger pullers, people who go in and knock down doors and shoot people?
Well, the chief will appear before you, and one of his institutional reforms is to rebalance tooth to tail. So, but maybe the other way to answer that question, Senator, is the Army provides a lot of capabilities to the joint force, a lot of enablers, a lot of logistics, a lot of SIGINT. And at any given time in any force, you can count on about a third of it being deployable.
A third of it being deployable. If we decided as a nation to have 500,000 people in our standing Army and 360,000 people in the Guard, would that be an irresponsible decision? Would we be throwing money away, given the threats we have?
I'd have to go back and do the kind of analysis that we've done to get to 450.
I just want the point to be that the analysis of numbers is budget-driven, not threats. You're living in a budget confine, right? And you're coming up with numbers to do the best you can with the money you've got. I'm asking you and Secretary Hagel, if the country wanted a 500,000 person Army, would that be a waste of money if you had all the money in the world to spend? Is that too much?
Can I first react to the characterization of this as entirely budget-driven? If it were entirely budget-driven, we would have accepted the levels of sequestration and built the budget accordingly. We haven't. We've said that's too far and that we can provide the nation's security needs at a higher level. Whether we would go higher again, I think that would I'd have to do the analytics to figure out what to do with it.
Secretary Hagel.
I think that Chairman's exactly right. That's what we'd have to determine. And
would you like to have a 500,000 man Army to defend the nation, Secretary Dempsey?
I hope you just didn't call me a secretary.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Because then I'd really have to. Then I'd have to answer the question.
I don't want to demote you here. I apologize.
You know what, Senator? What I'd really like is budget certainty and the flexibility to use the money I've got responsibly. Show you what that does, and then ask you: is this what you want to do?
Final question. If in year 10 of the sequestration, our national security spending on defense is at 3% or less of GDP spending on defense, what kind of risk, one, is that smart, and what kind of risk would that entail?
is that a question? Well, I think the way we have to answer that or analyze an answer for you would be, as we did in the QDR, as we have done, as we have prepared that QDR, what do we need, what do we require to defend the national interests of this country, to protect this country? I don't know where that comes in. Does that come in at 4% or 3.5% or 3.2? I think that's where you start, Senator, and then you match what those resources would be in order to accomplish the mission of securing this country.
Will you send me a statement doing that, actually? I want you to do that exercise. Use 3% of GDP spending as the amount of money you'll have. Compare the risk. And
for how long? For
the next 20 years.
For a certainty of 20 years?
Yes.
Okay, well, while you're thinking of an answer to that.
Well, we can run models. Sure.
Okay, if you could get the committee and Senator Graham those models, him first, that'd be great.